Hi guys, today I'll be painting up a Fyreslayer. I started off with a base coat of Chaos Black from a spray can, and once that's all set and dry, I use dark flesh tone through an airbrush and I coat the entire model with it. I then make a mixture of 2 parts tan and 1 part dwarf skin and apply this to all the skin on the model. Again, I do this through an airbrush. This is purely to speed the process up. If you'd like to, you can just do this by a paintbrush. Next I make a mixture of 1 part soft tone, 2 parts red tone and 4 parts glaze medium. And I wash the skin with this. The glaze medium makes sure the consistency of the wash stays okay and doesn't pull the pigment away from each other. This is then followed by a highlight made of 1 part tan and 2 part dwarf skin on all the flesh on the model. This is a fairly rough highlight. It's to make an outlining and make sure I don't paint in the recesses. Once this is dry, I add 2 parts elf skin tone to this mixture and I apply a next highlight, making sure I'm leaving the previous layer visible. This will create a nice transition between the colors. I repeat this process by adding 1 part dead white to the same mixture and make a thinner highlight on the model. Using dark flesh tone, I then block in the hairs, the beard and the hairs. This is as this color is to make the following red cover easier. Once dry, I paint in the hairs and the beard with gory red. This is then followed by the wash of Carroburg Crimson. Put it on there quite thick. Once the Carroburg Crimson is dry, I dry brush the hair and the beard with bloody red. This is then followed by a next dry brush, staying more towards the outside of the hair and the beard of hot orange. I then make a mixture of 2 parts hot orange and 1 part sun yellow, and I apply a next dry brush to the hair and the beard, making sure I stay towards the top of the model. Using charred brown, I now block in the red parts and the leather parts on the model. As for the leather parts, I make a mixture of 1 part charred brown and 1 part beastie brown, and I apply a first basic highlight. There's no need to be really precise with this. Just make sure it's in the spots where you want it. If you overdo it a bit, it's not a big deal. Using Agrax Earthshade, I now shade the leather parts. Once the Agrax earth shades dry, I use Beastie Brown to apply a next highlight. When I do this, I make sure I drag the paint out nicely to get a smoother transition. This is then followed by a mixture of 1 part Beastie Brown and 1 part leather brown, and I repeat the process, making sure I leave the previous layer a little bit visible. I repeat this with a pure leather brown towards the outer edges of the leather parts of the model. Using shadow grey, I blocked in some other parts on the model. I wasn't really sure what color to make them, so I decided to make them grey. These parts are then highlighted by a mixture of 1 part shadow grey and 1 part stonewall grey. I stay to the outsides of the grey parts. Next I added 1 part stonewall grey to this mixture, and I applied the next highlight to the same areas. Again, this is a thinner line than the previous one, and on the front of the model I started the highlight on a lower position than the previous one. I then added 1 part dead white to this mixture, and I repeated the process by applying edge highlights to the grey parts. Using steel, I then block in all the metallic parts. This is then followed by a wash of Nuln oil to achieve a shading effect. Once the Nuln oil is fully dried, I dry brush all the metal parts with silver. Using gory red, I now block in the red parts. This goes over the charred brown I applied earlier on the model. In this case it's only the shield. This is then followed by a wash of Carroburg crimson. Once the Carroburg crimson is dry, I apply a first rough highlight of gory red. Because of the the surface of the shield. I nearly highlight the entire shield with it. Making a mixture of 1 part gory red and 1 part bloody red, I then apply a next highlight to the shield. I keep dragging the paint up and down the shield to get a nice coverage, and it also improves the transition of the color. And I make sure I don't go all the way to the bottom of the shield. This is then followed by a highlight of pure bloody red in the same manner, only I make sure I stay higher up the shield. Next, I use Victorian brass and I block in all the parts that I want to be gold. Turned out it were quite some parts on this model. Once dry, I wash all these golden parts with Agrax Earthshade. In this way it gets a nice dark and warm look to it. Using Dwarven Gold, I then highlight all the golden parts. I make sure I leave the shading visible, and I leave a little bit of the Victorian brass visible as well. This is then followed by an edge highlight on the most outer and sharpest edges of silver. Once the silver has dried, I use Seraphim Sepia and wash all the gold thinly with it. This makes the silver shift to a more gold-like color, and the highlight effect will pop out really nice. Using khaki, I painted a little rope that has the extra axe he has attached to his belt. Once dry, I wash it with Agrax Earthshade. And once the Agrax Earthshade dries, I repeat the khaki. Give it a thin highlight with pure khaki. And this finishes up this model. I applied some grass and tufts to the base. So guys, I hope you liked this video. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe if you want to. Dislike if you want to as well. Please let me know what you didn't like about the video so I can improve on that. And I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys.